All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the That's Not Real Trek Watch Party podcast. My name is Scotty, also known as EBC, and directly below me is the beautiful Veronica, also known as Short and Sweet. So today we are considering episodes 7 and 8 of season 1 of Discovery. And just a quick recap, because this is going to come into play. 2 episodes ago, what we saw last week, in episode 5, the episode Choose Your Pain, we were introduced to, or reintroduced to, the character Harry Mudd, played by Rainn Wilson. And he did a magnificent job. And part of the reason why we were introduced to that character is because in the original series, Harry Mudd was portrayed as a little bit of a villain. And this was like somebody that Captain Kirk had to deal with. And he was also, like a jokester, a prankster, a little bit of comedy relief. And in this series, Discovery, he is also being portrayed a little bit as a villain. So, in trying to um, take the character of Harry Mudd as it was written in 1966 and translate it to our day, obviously we needed a little bit of upgrade, so to speak, on how that character is and what he stands for, and his emotions and his personality and all that. So again, that's why we both thought Rainn Wilson did an excellent job portraying Harry Mudd, but he is also going to have a much bigger impact on the crew of, in this case, Discovery, because of who he is as a person. And all of this is taking place before the fact of what we saw in the original series, who we got to know as Harry Mudd in that capacity, which basically he was just trying to pass off himself as a uh, what's the word I'm thinking of? A pimp.
Him.
Yeah, pimp. And turns out none of his women were actually real women anyway. But yeah, so this will come into play not only in this first episode. Yeah. Not only will this come into play in this first episode that we're going to see tonight, it will also come into play in one of the Star Trek shorts, the short treks, that was the little itty bitty mini series that CBS produced, and he has his own episode there. So, 3 episodes basically of new Star Trek that has been created in the last 6 years features Harry Mudd and who he is as a person, and we're really going to get to see who he is and what he does in this episode coming up. So that's the first one, and that is Magic to Make the Sanest Man Go Mad. And then episode 8, after that, Si Vis Pacem Parabellum, or some kind of Latin thing that I'm sure I'm destroying the proper pronunciation of that. So we will get to that here in a minute. So first off, we will start with Magic to Make the Sanest Man Go Mad, where you really get to see Harry Mudd at his finest. So here we go. Oh, you grew a giant black beard in that time.
Yeah.
All right. So that was episode 7, Magic to Make the Sanest Man Go Mad. Harkens back. I was the first time I saw this, I was immediately reminded of the Next Generation Season 5, Episode 18, Cause and Effect, that starred
Yes.
Kelsey Grammer. Oh, nice cat butt there in your face.
All right. Fun, fun.
And yeah, because the Enterprise crew was caught in a very similar temporal loop. Um, Unlike that, though, it seemed like we really didn't have, aside from Stamets, any type of uh, other people recognizing that they were caught in a loop, and it was always Stamets that was coming to them to explain the situation and then get them to understand this is what we need to do. Um, and in Cause and Effect, the crew was constantly having feelings of deja vu, like they had done it before, but there was no understanding of what it was they were supposed to do to end the loop until they were able to send information forward to the next loop through data. Um, so let me ask you this: how do the two episodes compare in your mind?
I mean, I feel like they're pretty similar, just in that trope of like the time loop in general, and everything's going to start replaying, but then you see little differences along the way.
Right.
I feel like it's a very good like callback to that, like what Trek was and what Trek is now. It's kind of like a nice blend of the two. So
Okay.
yeah, I thought it was an excellent episode, and I love that they threw that in there so early on.
Right down to the ship blowing up.
Right.
Like I don't remember specifically the first time I ever saw that episode of Next Generation, but I do recall that it was a shocker.
Okay.
Watching the Enterprise blow up, and then also, maybe other times throughout any type of TV show where you've got something major happening that you just don't expect, and however they explain it, or come up with something different. Um, The Walking Dead was one of the first television shows to have major characters die periodically, and that was like a big thing uh, at the time. That was almost like a sacred thing. You never had main characters die unless they didn't want to be on the show anymore, like Tasha Yar, you know. Um, so yes, there we go. The USS Bozeman, commanded by, I can't remember the name of it, but he was played by Kelsey Grammer, who actually had a couple of guest roles in Star Trek over the years. And the other thing coming into play is when you show something like that. Like, I also remember in the Next Generation, they show in the first episode, Encounter at Farpoint, something that had never been seen or probably even thought of in previous Trek history up until that point: the ship separating. And that was
Yeah.
like the gut punch of the first episode. Holy shit, the fucking ship
Oh.
is separated. Yeah, it was so cool to see. Um, and then you got that same kind of sense, I thought, from the Enterprise D blowing up in Cause and Effect, and then the loop starts over, and you're like, what the hell is going on? Are we seeing this? And then you start seeing the differences, and it blows up again, and you know,
Mhm.
uh,
I think they even blew up the ship for the first time. I think it was before the credit roll. Like so in that
yeah.
intro, and
Hmm.
then they hit the credits, and you're like, what? And then it starts over, and you're like, wait a
Yeah.
minute, what is going on?
Right. Uh, Captain Morgan Bateman. There we go. Yeah, my memory escapes me. It's not so great anymore with that stuff. But the I thought they did a really nice tribute to that episode in this, with this storyline, and recapturing that sense of adventure and holy hell, the ship blew up, what's going on, especially if you hadn't seen cause and effect before. Um, and it's the same type of feeling that you would be seeing this for the first time as we had back at the time that came out. That was season 5, so that was 1992 that they had that episode. Um, and in my mind, that's also the hallmark of really great storytellers, pushing the envelope to a point that you just really can't expect or don't expect, and then pulling it back a little bit and then saying, okay, here's how we quantify something like this. Um,
Yeah.
so in my mind, this is one of the better episodes of Discovery because of that fact. Not only are they taking you out of everything that had come before that for almost an episodic thing here, but really doing it justice by pushing that envelope and giving you something completely new, almost completely new, that you haven't really expected or seen before. Now watching that again, and this is your second time watching through that, you mentioned in the chat that you would like to see an entire series centered around the misadventures of Harcourt Fenton Mudd.
Absolutely.
So, in your mind, with keeping in mind the aspect of how many people just don't recognize this new crap as real Star Trek, uh, what would you like to see if CBS and Paramount were to pursue that avenue?
I think they have ways to take the storyline where, at the end we see that his girlfriend or his love interest or whatever has come to collect him,
Right.
as it were. They could go so many different directions with that, like have him escape or like him trying to escape. They could just pick it up right there and
Yeah.
then, have him escape and he's gallivanting all around the universe, just creating chaos, and we're there watching it.
Um, I don't recall the original series episode with Harry Mudd well enough, but it seems to me that at some point between now and when that episode happens, which I believe is we would say it's approximately 2 years in the Star Trek timeline. Uh, I don't believe there's any mention of Stella or her father or him being married or any of that. So maybe that's he did somehow get out of it and now is leading his old life again.
Yeah.
So yeah, that definitely could be explored, and especially now that CBS and Paramount have gone in the direction as we're going to see with Lower Decks and Prodigy. Now, Lower Decks is almost entirely a comedy.
Oh, okay.
It does take place and is considered canon, although obviously it's very contrived. It's very how should I yeah, boisterous is a good descriptive there. I mean, they literally made it into a comedy purposefully and all that. But I mean, there's comedy all throughout Star Trek history. I mean, how many times did Data play comic relief on
Oh,
TNG? You
yeah.
know,
All the time.
and I think that could do well. A series on Harcourt Fenton Mudd, or even if he's not like the main um, uh, focus of such a series, I think they could do a series similar to the short treks where they explore these little niche pockets of the Trek universe, and maybe devote a couple of episodes towards the continuing misadventures of Mudd and all the other things. Q, the Traveler you mentioned. How about Um,
Throw Wesley in there.
yeah, Wesley. How about how about Berlinghoff Rasmussen, the guy in TNG that killed the time traveler and came back in this ship from like the 33rd century or something to steal
Yeah,
technology. Okay.
yeah.
Any of these other little characters that have popped in and out of Star Trek, the universe, and uh, there are other stories maybe to be told with what has gone on with them instead of just popping into our main characters' lives and causing a ruckus. All right, so any other thoughts on that episode?
I thought it was pretty cool that they use Mud's nature against him, his opportunistic
Hmm.
um, you know, mind, and they're like, okay, well, here's how we're gonna trap him. I thought that was like a very like cool way to resolve everything.
Yeah.
That they know he's gonna go for this, and then that's how they nail him.
Well, and keeping in mind that they started a new loop, and Stamets had to explain everything all over again, and within 30 minutes, they set
Yeah.
that all up, rewiring the captain's chair, accessing
Mhm.
in the database to find Stella and her father, and get them to come there, and all of this stuff. Um,
Yeah.
I believe if there's a moral of the story to be found, it's don't be like Mud, because how easy they were able to turn it around on him once they had all of the information in place and use that personality against him, like you said.
Right.
So, yeah, interesting. So, all right, we'll move on now then to episode 8. I have no clue how to properly pronounce this, but it is Si vis pacem para bellum. Now, this was a phrase that was uttered by Sarek, Spock's father, 2 episodes ago in episode 6, Leth. And it was only mentioned one time, and it was in his dream world, in his mind while he was dying, and Burnham was joined with his mind, and she heard him utter this phrase. Now, if I recall the context properly, I believe it had something to do with people not being in the place that they should be. And I believe that was in the context of him not understanding why Burnham is in his mind, in his memories, and why he didn't want her there. So I think that's how that applies in this situation, and maybe we can decipher that a little bit better as we watch the episode. All right, here we go. Okay. So a lot happening in that episode. Um, uh, I still can't pronounce it, but I decided to stop talking out of my ass and actually look up what that is. And it's an old Latin phrase that basically translates, if you want peace, prepare for war. And so I would guess that, that's just like, the modern version of peace through strength. In other words, prepare for the worst and you'll find the peace that you seek. Um, and I, I believe that part of the reason why it is the title of this episode in particular is that they were seeking out the Pavans to be able to use the giant pointy crystal tree slash thing as a radio tower to try to end the war. And it didn't quite work out that way, did it?
Never does.
No. All right, so that's the first thing. Now this is also the we haven't seen for 2 episodes Admiral Cornwell, and at the end of episode 6, she was kidnapped. So now we see her, and that she's been made a prisoner of the Klingons, and instead of like anything else that might have been used in that situation, having an admiral in your prisoner of war list, they decided to go ahead and have L'Rell, who just so happens to be a very skilled interrogator, try to beat the shit out of her and say, well, spill your secrets. Now, I think what most people might miss about this episode is what we found out way back when L'Rell was on the ship with I don't know, the white Klingon guy. I can't remember his name offhand.
Was that Cole?
No, that's the guy she was
No,
just
that's the
talking
other
to.
one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I can't remember. But he was the outcast, and then he took over when T'Kuvma was killed, but then he was left on the ship, and L'Rell was with him on the shattered husk of the previous ship before Discovery, and that's where they left it. We don't know anything that happened to L'Rell after that point. We don't know what happened to that guy. We don't know anything else except that now she's the person who's interrogating Admiral Cornwell. And I thought it was an absolute great show of who Admiral Cornwell was, that knowing what she knows about the Klingons, when L'Rell starts growling, screaming at her, she just screams right back in her face and stands her ground and proves that she's up to the challenge of facing off a Klingon. And L'Rell is impressed by that. So even in the face of being kidnapped and being a prisoner of war, Cornwell is standing up for what she knows is right and doing her best to try to show that she's not a pushover. She's not going to be easily taken down through interrogation or any other means. But I found it interesting that they had those two face off, L'Rell and Cornwell, that are not necessarily main characters in the rest of the ongoing story of the Klingon War. And then we also had the story of the Pavans, that they're trying to go secure their assistance to try to end the war. Saru gets taken over or has a severe personality change. We find out later that's because his entire existence as a Kelpian has been one of fear, and that's what guides all of his decision. His fear, his anxiety, his sole purpose being to avoid death, to avoid harm, and therefore everything about him and his species is geared towards avoiding that. And he says as soon as he got to Pavo and he saw what the Pavo inhabitants are like, he finally, for the first time in his life, did not experience fear. And that's why he wanted to stay, and he, went off on this rant and tangent. So this is definitely foreshadowing what we are going to find out soon. And it's going to be, soon is going to be in season 2, of who the Kelpians are. We've got this new species that's being presented to us in Discovery as a main character, who we only know bits and pieces about what the Kelpians are like. Now we've known before that they are one of two races on his home planet, that they are the prey, and the other race is the predator. And so their entire coexistence, these two races, is geared towards that now, and that's where we get what he's supposed to be like. But this is the first time we've seen something that might contradict that, and that is the speed and strength at which Saru is able to operate. We see him take down Tyler. We see him take down Burnham. We see him running full tilt through the forest. And the first time I saw that part of this episode, I thought it was almost like horror elements. They were trying to instill fear in the sense of the viewer that he's like, running full tilt through the forest like a predator. So how did you feel about that?
Yeah, I kind of thought the same thing. Now that the fear is gone, is he modeling himself after the other species from his planet? Is he now becoming the predator because he knows those two sides very well, and now that he's not afraid, maybe he thinks this is what I should be.
Right. And along with that, if Kelpians are capable of this strength and speed, why are they prey? Always, always in
What's
their
what's
society. Okay.
what's the predator like?
Yeah, exactly. If they're capable of this, able to take down humans with such ease, what is the predator like on their home planet? You know.
Mhm.
Um, and then the other thing was a little bit of a side note there. Of it was revealed to us that Tyler has this undercurrent of barely contained rage, that all he wants to do from here on out is hurt Klingons as much as possible, whether the war is going on or not. I mean, he might want to end the war, but is it is it plausible to say that simply because he was kidnapped and tortured by the Klingons, that's what he wants to do for the rest of his days, is simply harm Klingons? What do you think on that?
I think it's very plausible. Knowing what I know a little bit about further into the series, I can see maybe where some more of that is coming from without giving. Yeah, it's like
Yeah.
just too spoilery. But yeah, I could definitely see that. Like, eh, however long he was there, I know they said it. But I can't recall.
It was since, well, he said since the Battle of the Binary Stars, yeah, while they were in prison. So that's well over a year. He was a
Yeah,
political
so
prisoner and being tortured by the Klingons. When Lorca was put in the cell with them, he looked like he was in pretty bad shape.
yeah, so that I mean that's gonna last a while. That PTSD,
Yeah,
that inner rage, it's not gonna go away anytime soon for him.
right. Okay, and then the final point that I had was we end the episode with Burnham realizing that the Pavins have tried to take on a mediator role in this war, because their entire existence is based on bringing order to chaos. So they literally called the Klingons and said, "Hey, come over here so you guys can talk this out." And that's where we
Right.
ended the episode. So next week, the episode that we are starting with episode 9, Into the Forest I Go, is going to talk about how now they have to face this, which is essentially the leader right now of the Klingon forces. That's Cole with his coalition, and he's now commanding the Ship of the Dead, and has quite a few of the Klingon houses at his beck and call. And in return, he's giving them the cloaking technology that only the Ship of the Dead had. So we can see this is how the proliferation of cloaking technology was caused throughout the Klingon Empire, and this is all looking very stark and not good for the Federation
Yeah.
having to deal with this. You can see in the one Vulcan admiral that Lorca's talking to, there's not quite, they're starting to be fearful that the Federation might fall during this war because it's just not going that well. So, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think that the title of the episode's very fitting, prepare for a war. This is getting it all set up to come to a head, and we're nearing, what is there, 10 episodes in the first season, or do we have more?
15.
15. So we're past the halfway point, and we're getting into like really, we're gonna address the war soon here, and uh yeah, I think it's not looking great for
Yeah.
Starfleet right now.
Yeah, and it's hard to say what's going to happen. I mean, we know at some point in the next 2 years something is going to happen. At the very least, we have a peace treaty because it went back down to, in the original series, the uneasy peace that existed between the Klingons and the Federation. The first time we were introduced to the Klingons in the original series, they were meeting at this one planet, and they immediately get into a fight. Mostly because the Klingons were talking shit to Scotty about the Enterprise's engines. And it's like, damn it, Scotty, just lay off. So they say your engines are not great. So fucking what? Um, but yeah, so we do know that the war ends at some point. And at the very least, they have an uneasy peace all the way through the original series and into the sixth movie, when things drastically change in the undiscovered country because the Klingons suffer that severe blow to their home world. But that only exists, and I've seen this in many different iterations throughout the entire Star Trek universe, that the Klingons can only have peace, or rather, other species, other coalitions like the Federation, can only have peace from the Klingons at the barrel of a gun. And that is holding them to a standstill because the Klingons are nothing but conquest. And we saw L'Rell talking to Cole about that, how she was basically saying all we have to do is get this technology that Discovery has, and you can take your ambitions for conquest far outside of our borders now. So everybody wants to get their hands on Discovery and its secrets. Did you
Right.
have any other thoughts on that?
Um, well, I think it's kind of interesting that, Discovery's got this spore drive and everybody wants that, but the Klingons also have this shielding technology, and it doesn't seem like right now anybody's really going after that
Right.
other than the rest of the Klingons. So it's kind of like an interesting dichotomy between uh the two factions there. What's going on?
If I recall correctly, There's a point in the original series where they stole a Klingon cloaking technology producer, whatever the piece of equipment is,
Mhm.
and used it briefly. And then I know there was mention of it all the way somewhere in Next Generation about how the Khitomer Accords, part of the peace process, then forbade the Federation from using cloaking
Yeah.
technology, which then put them at a disadvantage to the Romulan Empire. But
Mhm.
yeah, I don't know. So far, I don't believe we have seen any type of point at which somebody in the Federation is like, hey, let's go try to steal their cloaking technology.
Right.
Oh,
Trying to take our fast ship.
and last episode, we also got introduced to the concept of a time crystal, which
Mhm.
allowed Mud to manipulate time in the way that he did. And we've dealt with time travel so many different times in Star Trek history. This was not a surprise. Obviously, they were going to introduce it at some point. It is a surprise to me, however, the manner in which they did that. Because what we have not found out yet, but we will find out next season, is the source of that time crystal and how Mud got his hands on it. So that's something to look forward to.
Yeah, it's always a wormhole or,
Yeah. Or
something
or
like something like that.
calculating, doing all the calculations required to just slingshot across, around
Slingshot
the
around the
sun,
sun,
because we got
yeah.
to go save the whales. Yeah. All right. So anything else on that, or did we cover everything?
Um, I did write down. They spoke about it was very brief, but they brought up General Order One, which was to not interfere with pre-war species. Um,
Hmm.
is this maybe precursor to Prime Directive, or maybe they're just calling it General Order One, and it, you know, terminology changes and it becomes Prime Directive. I
Yes,
don't know.
it
They didn't
it, it
really
it
delve deep.
it does. I know that for a fact because
Okay.
General Order One, which is um, it's basically like you said, the Federation is not to allowed to interfere with the development of a species if they are pre-warp capable,
Mhm.
and uh, what you're talking about there is up the entire original series they called a General Order 1. They also would reference a General Order 2, General Order 3, and I can't remember what the other ones are. Then in TNG, they started referring to that as the Prime Directive. So under Starfleet, they will refer to that as a General Order 1. I believe at some point in Next Generation they did refer to it as such, but they're talking
Mhm.
about the Prime Directive. And we also know that the Prime Directive or General Order 1 did not happen until well after the time space that Enterprise occurs in, because the
Okay.
Federation had not been founded yet while that series was going on.
Mhm.
So once the Federation is founded, then that's something that does come into play, and it is now in play by this time. So we do know that Discovery is acting under that kind of a constraint, that Starfleet, as part of the Federation, is following General Order 1 or the Prime Directive, and that's part of the reason why they're approaching the Pavans in the way that they are. And we also saw that the Pavans are another type of species that we haven't seen before, where they're kind of like this fine particle mist that makes a bunch of noise and can communicate telepathically, and it's also interconnected uh, with the planet itself, which reminded me of what's that movie? where they got the hair and they connect the hair with the horse and connect the hair with the pterodactyl and oh,
Got nothing.
help me out, Cage. Yeah,
I haven't seen that
big
one.
big giant movie. I know you've seen it. It came out not too
The
long
blue
ago.
people?
Yeah,
The blue? Oh, Avatar.
Avatar. Yes.
Okay, I've never seen it.
Yeah. Oh, you haven't seen it. Okay.
Uh-uh.
So in Avatar, there's a part where they're having communication with the plants and the animals and all that because of the same effect. You've got this kind of sparkling blue, misty type teal that is part of the life force of the planet. So that reminded me of that.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's just kind of interesting that even after 60 years, they're still coming up with new species, new styles of how a species could be, and putting that into this. And I guarantee you, based off of some of the previews and the trailers that I saw, when we get into Strange New Worlds, which we're roughly going to do season 1 and season 2 of Discovery with some of the shorts interspliced, and then we're going to go into that first season of Strange New Worlds. And I know for a fact, Strange New Worlds, they designed to be like the old Star Trek, where everything that they do, we're now talking about the
Oh,
Enterprise's first 5-year mission before Kirk, and everything that they do is exploration. So we're going back to the core of Star Trek, finding new worlds, new civilizations, new things that we have never seen before, species, people, ships, all sorts of stuff. Um, so that is going to be a fantastic ride when we get to that. Um, yeah, but I think that pretty much covers everything. So,
yeah.
all right, then next week is episode 9, Into the Forest I Go, and episode 10, Despite Yourself. And I will tell you, you will probably already know because I think you've seen to this point already, we're about to take a hard ass fucking left turn into nowhere. With the series storyline, this overlying story arc that's been going through the whole season so far, we know everything so far that's been going on with the Klingon War and how Burnham instigated that. We know how she went from being uh, the first officer on the Shenzhou to becoming the Federation's first mutineer and being convicted of that to now being on Discovery of all places, and it's just kind of like this whirlwind storyline, but we understand it and we understand where the story is probably going to be going, knowing how the original series starts out. But in the next episode, we're going to just completely turn everything around and start something brand new. So it's very exciting. I thought it was so well done. It really throws you for a loop. So that'll be next Thursday on, as long as we both don't have any kind of issue with that we need to cancel it. Oh, come on, my thing don't want to work here. So that's going to be uh, the 21st. Yes? I think so. July 21st. And maybe Feisty will be here. Uh, but maybe not. I don't know. Maybe she's not quite the Star Trek fan. I don't know. Maybe. Maybe you like new Star Trek because you haven't seen any of the old Trek and it's perfectly fine. And yeah. All right. Yeah, my internet is not that great right now, but at least we're able to do this.
Got through the show's okay.
Yeah, I know. It's probably my webcam or some other bullshit. Who knows? All right, so episodes 9 and 10 of season 1 of Discovery next week. That'll be on Thursday, July 21st. And if you're able to, stop on by and check it out, and we'll continue watching a couple of episodes a week and going through all the new Star Trek, and we'll have fun doing it. Alrighty?
Yeah.
All right. Thank you for joining us. We'll see you later. Adios. Don't forget, tomorrow in the Conflux, we are doing Sleeper. I'm showing that movie in the DMCA Nope series, 7 p.m. And otherwise, we'll see you at some other point. Adios. See ya. Bye-bye.